What if the power to save the world could also destroy it? And we're still deciding which path to take. Nuclear power and weapons have reshaped our world, sparking a race for dominance, fueling debates about morality, and leaving a trail of destruction and innovation. Imagine a single flash of light leveling an entire city, or a silent, invisible force contaminating the land for centuries. Now, consider this. What single event caused the greatest shift in humanity's relationship with nuclear technology? By the end of this video, you'll know the answer. But first, let's uncover the story of how this power came to define the modern age. The Manhattan Project wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was an unparalleled collaboration of global minds, including refugees who had fled Nazi persecution. Physicist Leo Szilard co-authored a letter with Albert Einstein, warning President Roosevelt about Germany's potential nuclear program. This letter set the Manhattan Project in motion, making it a race against time. On July 16, 1945, the Trinity test unveiled the destructive power of nuclear fission. Witnesses described the explosion as a second sun, with its light visible over 100 miles away. Physicist Robert Wilson later said, "The feeling of giddy terror remains with me to this day." The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki soon followed. Survivors, or hibakusha, endured severe burns, radiation sickness, and long-term health effects. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, who lived through both bombings, became a symbol of resilience and a powerful voice for nuclear disarmament. These events marked the dawn of the nuclear age, and the ethical dilemmas that came with it. The atomic bombings of Japan shocked the world, and the Soviet Union quickly developed its own nuclear weapons. By 1949, they had detonated their first bomb, RDS-1, marking the start of the Cold War arms race. The competition escalated with the development of hydrogen bombs, which harnessed nuclear fusion, producing explosions thousands of times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. The arms race reached its peak with events like the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, where the world came dangerously close to nuclear war. Behind the scenes, cooler heads like Soviet officer Vasily Arkhipov made critical decisions that averted catastrophe. This era wasn't just about weapons, it also saw extensive nuclear testing. The Castle Bravo test in 1954 exposed residents of the Marshall Islands to life-altering radiation. Fallout from these tests entered ecosystems worldwide, earning the nickname atomic rain. The spread of nuclear weapons beyond the United States and Soviet Union was inevitable once the technology was revealed. By the 1950s, the United Kingdom joined the Nuclear Club, testing its first weapon, Operation Hurricane, in 1952. France followed in 1960 with its test, Gerboise Bleue, conducted in the Sahara Desert, signaling its intent to maintain strategic independence from NATO. China became the next major nuclear power, detonating its first bomb in 1964 during its push for self-reliance under Chairman Mao Zedong. The rivalry between India and Pakistan further complicated global proliferation. India's 1974 nuclear test, Smiling Buddha, was framed as peaceful, but it sent a clear signal of its capabilities. Pakistan responded aggressively, developing its program under the leadership of Abdul Qadir Khan, who acquired critical technologies through a network of international espionage and smuggling. Pakistan's first test in 1998 solidified South Asia as a nuclear flashpoint, with both nations maintaining large arsenals and a history of military conflict over Kashmir. In the Middle East, Israel pursued a covert nuclear program in the 1950s with assistance from France. Its facility at Dimona became the cornerstone of its arsenal, which remains shrouded in secrecy due to Israel's policy of nuclear ambiguity, refusing to confirm or deny possession of nuclear weapons. This ambiguity serves as both a deterrent and a flashpoint in an already volatile region. North Korea's nuclear journey has been the most openly defiant. After withdrawing from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, in 2003, it conducted its first nuclear test in 2006. Each subsequent test has increased the yield and sophistication of its weapons, leading to heightened global tensions. Today, North Korea is seen as a wild card in global security, its actions provoking widespread condemnation and diplomatic stalemates. The Non-Proliferation Treaty, introduced in 1968, was designed to curb the spread of nuclear weapons. It rests on three pillars: disarmament by existing nuclear powers, non-proliferation by other states, and the peaceful use of nuclear energy. While it has been largely effective, preventing a cascade of nuclear-armed nations, its limits are clear. Nations like India, Pakistan, and Israel never signed the treaty, while others, like North Korea, found ways to exploit its loopholes. A growing concern is the risk posed by non-state actors, such as terrorist organizations, acquiring nuclear materials. Incidents like the 2007 breach of South Africa's Pelindaba nuclear facility highlight vulnerabilities in nuclear security. Armed intruders managed to penetrate the perimeter of one of the world's most secure nuclear sites, raising alarms about the potential for nuclear theft. Although no materials were taken, the event underscored how dangerous these gaps can be. The international community has taken steps to mitigate these risks. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, monitors compliance with the NPT and ensures that nuclear materials designated for energy production are not diverted for weapons use. Still, enforcement is a challenge, as nations like Iran test the boundaries of the treaty's safeguards. Iran's nuclear program remains under scrutiny, with its enrichment of uranium drawing concerns that it could transition to weapons development. Today, nuclear proliferation is like a domino effect. Each new player increases the risk of instability. The global balance hangs on a fragile thread, where the ambitions of one nation could have catastrophic consequences for all. After the devastation of World War II, nuclear technology was reimagined as a force for good. The slogan, "Atoms for Peace," became the rallying cry of the 1950s, as nations sought to harness nuclear energy to power homes, industries, and cities. The first commercial nuclear power plant was commissioned in Obninsk, USSR, in 1954, marking a historic moment. The United States followed closely with the opening of the Shippingport Atomic Power Station in Pennsylvania in 1958. By the 1970s, nuclear energy was heralded as the future of electricity, promising cleaner alternatives to coal and oil. Nuclear energy's potential lies in its efficiency and low carbon emissions. A single uranium fuel pellet, roughly the size of a fingertip, produces as much energy as a ton of coal or 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas. This density of energy production allows nuclear plants to generate vast amounts of electricity with minimal environmental impact. France became a global leader in nuclear power, generating over 70% of its electricity from nuclear reactors, significantly reducing its reliance on fossil fuels. The role of nuclear energy in combating climate change has only grown more urgent. Unlike fossil fuels, nuclear power plants emit virtually no greenhouse gases during operation, making them a critical tool in reducing global carbon footprints. Advocates argue that the reliability of nuclear power, capable of producing consistent, large-scale energy, makes it an essential complement to renewable sources like wind and solar, which can be intermittent. Yet, nuclear power's potential is matched by its dangers. The disasters at 3 Mile Island 1979, Chernobyl 1986, and Fukushima 2011 exposed the catastrophic risks of reactor failures. These incidents have left deep scars, both literal and figurative, in the history of nuclear energy. At 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, a partial meltdown of Reactor 2 raised alarms about safety standards in the United States. Although no fatalities were directly attributed to the accident, it caused widespread public fear and led to stricter regulations on nuclear plants. This fear deepened with the Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine, where a flawed RBMK reactor design and operator errors caused a massive explosion. The blast released radiation across Europe, displacing over 300,000 people and contaminating vast swathes of land. The red forest near the reactor, named for its radiation-induced orange hue, became a stark reminder of the long-lasting environmental damage. Fukushima, triggered by a 9.0 magnitude earthquake and subsequent tsunami, highlighted the vulnerability of nuclear plants to natural disasters. Floodwaters overwhelmed the plant's cooling systems, causing a triple meltdown. Over 160,000 people were evacuated, and the contamination of land and water remains a challenge to this day. The bravery of the Fukushima 50, workers who stayed behind to stabilize the reactors, demonstrated the human cost of such disasters. One of nuclear power's most persistent challenges is waste management. Spent nuclear fuel remains highly radioactive for thousands of years, requiring secure storage solutions. Most waste is currently stored on-site at nuclear facilities, a temporary fix for a long-term problem. Finland's Onkalo repository, a deep geological storage site carved into stable bedrock, represents a promising innovation. Designed to last 100,000 years, it offers a glimpse at the potential for permanent solutions. However, not all nations have made such strides. Many countries grapple with political and logistical hurdles, leaving waste in vulnerable storage facilities. The fear of accidents, sabotage, or theft adds another layer of complexity to the issue. Innovations in nuclear technology are redefining the landscape. Small modular reactors, SMRs, designed to be safer and more adaptable, are gaining traction. Unlike traditional reactors, SMRs are compact, factory-built, and can be deployed in remote locations or integrated into existing power grids. Their modular design also reduces the financial and logistical barriers often associated with nuclear plant construction. Fusion energy, often referred to as the holy grail of nuclear power, offers the promise of limitless clean energy. Unlike fission, which splits atoms, fusion combines hydrogen isotopes to produce energy, leaving no long-lived radioactive waste. Projects like the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor in France aim to demonstrate the feasibility of fusion within the next few decades. If successful, fusion could revolutionize global energy systems, providing a sustainable solution to the world's growing energy demands. Despite its challenges, nuclear energy remains a cornerstone of efforts to combat climate change and ensure energy security. Countries like China and India are rapidly expanding their nuclear programs to meet growing energy demands while reducing emissions. Meanwhile, Germany has taken a different path, phasing out nuclear power entirely in favor of renewables, a decision that has sparked debate over whether the risks of nuclear energy outweigh its benefits. The future of nuclear power lies in innovation, regulation, and public trust. With advancements in technology and a global push toward decarbonization, nuclear energy has the potential to redefine humanity's relationship with the atom, from a force of destruction to one of sustainability. The environmental and health consequences of nuclear technology are among its most lasting and devastating legacies. Whether from atmospheric testing, accidents, or waste mismanagement, the impacts of radiation have seeped into ecosystems and communities worldwide, leaving scars that persist for generations. During the height of the Cold War, atmospheric nuclear tests were conducted with little regard for their environmental consequences. The US, the Soviet Union, the UK, and France detonated hundreds of bombs above ground, releasing radioactive isotopes into the atmosphere. These particles, including strontium-90 and cesium-137, traveled across continents, contaminating soil, water, and air. One of the most infamous tests, Castle Bravo in 1954, was conducted on Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. Its yield of 15 megatons, more than twice what scientists expected, created a massive fallout plume that spread over 7,000 square miles. Residents of nearby Rongelap and Utrik atolls were exposed to dangerously high radiation levels, leading to severe burns, cancers, and birth defects. Many were forcibly relocated, and some islands remain uninhabitable to this day. The Nevada test site in the United States, where over 100 above-ground tests occurred, produced fallout that drifted across American farmlands and towns. Communities downwind from the site, later called downwinders, and reported spikes in cancer and other illnesses. Radioactive particles from these tests also contaminated milk supplies as far away as New York. Accidents like those at Chernobyl 1986 and Fukushima 2011 released massive amounts of radiation, creating long-term environmental and health crises. The Chernobyl disaster, caused by a reactor explosion, released an estimated 400 times the radiation of the Hiroshima bomb. The surrounding area, known as the exclusion zone, spans 1,000 square miles and remains largely uninhabitable. The Red Forest, located near the reactor, absorbed lethal radiation levels, killing off wildlife and vegetation and leaving behind a toxic wasteland. Yet nature has shown a surprising resilience in the absence of human interference. Wolves, bears, and other animals have returned to the exclusion zone, but studies reveal genetic mutations and reduced fertility among some species. Similarly, at Fukushima, contamination of land and water has devastated local ecosystems, with radioactive particles found in fish as far as the west coast of the United States. Cleanup efforts are expected to take decades, with contaminated soil stored in massive temporary containers across Japan. The human toll of radiation exposure is severe and often multi-generational. High doses of ionizing radiation, such as those from fallout or accidents, damage DNA, leading to cancers, birth defects, and other illnesses. Survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, known as hibakusha, faced not only physical ailments but also social stigma, as they were often shunned due to fears of genetic abnormalities. In communities exposed to fallout from testing, such as the Marshall Islands and Nevada, residents experienced elevated rates of thyroid cancer, leukemia, and other diseases linked to radioactive iodine. Studies conducted decades after the testing revealed that radioactive isotopes had entered the food chain, contaminating everything from fish to dairy products. This invisible poison became a haunting reminder of nuclear technology's far-reaching consequences. A major challenge of nuclear technology is the safe disposal of radioactive waste. Spent nuclear fuel, which remains hazardous for thousands of years, is often stored on-site at reactors in temporary cooling pools. These pools, while effective in the short term, pose significant risks in the event of natural disasters or human error. Efforts to create permanent storage solutions have made progress, but remain limited. Finland's Onkalo repository, built deep within stable bedrock, is designed to isolate nuclear waste for up to 100,000 years. However, such projects are rare, and many nations struggle to find politically acceptable sites for long-term disposal. The fear of leaks or sabotage adds to the complexity of managing this legacy. The environmental impacts of nuclear technology extend beyond local contamination. Fallout from Cold War-era testing has been detected in glaciers, oceans, and even remote regions like the Arctic. This global dispersion underscores the interconnectedness of ecosystems and the difficulty of containing radioactive materials once they are released. Even today, abandoned nuclear sites like Chernobyl and Bikini Atoll remain symbols of humanity's struggle to balance technological ambition with environmental stewardship. As nuclear power continues to expand, addressing these impacts is essential to prevent history from repeating itself. in the shadow of the Cold War's arms race, disarmament efforts emerged as humanity's attempt to step back from the nuclear brink. Though significant progress has been made, the path to reducing global nuclear arsenals has been fraught with challenges, marked by breakthroughs, setbacks, and shifting geopolitical landscapes. The first major effort to address nuclear proliferation came with the Partial Test Ban Treaty, PTBT, in 1963, signed by the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom. This treaty banned nuclear testing in the atmosphere, underwater, and in outer space, limiting the spread of radioactive fallout. However, it did not restrict underground tests, and the arms race continued unabated. The Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, SALT, in the 1970s marked the first formal agreements between the US and USSR to curb the growth of their arsenals. SALT I 1972 froze the number of ballistic missile launchers, while SALT II 1979 sought to limit the deployment of newer missile systems. Though SALT II was never ratified due to rising tensions, its provisions were largely honored by both sides. The turning point came with the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces (INF) Treaty, 1987, signed by US President Ronald Reagan and Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev. The treaty eliminated an entire category of nuclear weapons, ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles with ranges of 500 to 5,500 kilometers. Over 2,600 missiles were dismantled, making the INF Treaty a landmark achievement in disarmament. With the end of the Cold War, the focus shifted from limiting the growth of arsenals to actively reducing them. The Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, START series, played a crucial role in this effort. START 1, 1991, reduced the number of deployed warheads on each side to 6,000 and limited the number of delivery systems. New START, 2010, signed by the US and Russia. It capped deployed strategic nuclear warheads at 1,550 and delivery systems at 700. This treaty remains in effect today, though its future is uncertain. Despite these successes, challenges have emerged. Russia's suspension of its participation in New START in 2023, citing strained relations with the United States, has raised concerns about the potential unraveling of arms control frameworks. The global nuclear landscape has shifted significantly since the Cold War. Nations like China, India, Pakistan, and North Korea have expanded their nuclear programs, while new technologies threaten to destabilize existing treaties. Hypersonic missiles, capable of traveling at speeds exceeding Mach 5, are among the most concerning advancements. These weapons can evade traditional missile defense systems, reducing reaction times and increasing the risk of miscalculation. Both the US and Russia are investing heavily in hypersonic technology, raising fears of a new arms race. Nations like China, which historically maintained a small defensive nuclear arsenal, are now modernizing and expanding their capabilities. This shift reflects broader geopolitical tensions, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. Non-state actors also pose a growing threat. The potential for terrorist groups to acquire nuclear materials has spurred international efforts to secure stockpiles. Initiatives like the Nuclear Security Summits, held between 2010 and 2016, brought together world leaders to address vulnerabilities in nuclear infrastructure. In 2017, a new disarmament effort emerged, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, TPNW. This treaty, adopted by 122 countries, seeks to stigmatize and ultimately eliminate nuclear weapons. It bans the development, testing, production, and use of nuclear weapons, going further than previous agreements. However, the TPNW faces significant challenges. None of the nuclear-armed states have signed the treaty, arguing that it fails to address the realities of deterrence and geopolitical threats. Still, The TPNW reflects growing international frustration with the slow pace of disarmament and the desire for a nuclear-free world. The future of nuclear technology stands at a crossroads. Fusion energy promises limitless power without the risks of long-lived waste, while SMRs could transform energy grids. Yet the modernization of nuclear arsenals and the spread of weapons technology threaten to destabilize global security. The question remains, can humanity balance progress with caution?